Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Donna McGuire with Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education. You guys are in for such a treat tonight. We have got the creme de la creme of our focus team. Well, actually, we almost have our focus team, but there's just a few missing. We're focusing on wholesaling. And we're going to focus on not what we have in our courses. Our students and our out of the boxers know that cover wholesaling pretty thoroughly in there. This is more about the logistics and the conversations that you need to have. So we've got Wayne Hillier, Andrea, just Andrea, Neil Taniguchi, and Deb Kennedy here. So if you guys have questions, this is your chance. Ask them quickly. Say hi, please. We only have an hour with these guys. This is how we do Main Event Monday now, Wayne. We just load all the celebrities in so that we can just sit back. Let's see how our numbers
go. Yeah, for sure. We'll see if our numbers do better than Barry. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we have Andrea. We've got Andrea. So there's that, right?
There you go.
So, hi, everyone. Focus team, I mean. We'll check your sound here. There we are. Yeah, okay. There we go. So let's start with basically, Andrea, why don't we get you to start since that always seems to work for us, on just a quick overview of assignments and where it fits for you.
Sure.
The wholesaling, I should say.
Yeah, so what I love about wholesaling is you find a really great deal. So oftentimes it's a very ugly house that needs a lot of work, and you negotiate a good price with the seller and you sell that contract to somebody else who will do the work and allow them to make a profit at it as well. So oftentimes with wholesale deals, you can flip them very quickly, so even less than 7 days. And that's one of the things that I love is quick cash. Quick cash is always good. So really it comes down to marketing, to finding these deals. And oftentimes when I find these deals, it's because I'm doing marketing for other things. So what I would encourage people to do is, if you're looking for those ugly houses, is find the people who are looking for you through your marketing. And as many of you know, I don't actively market really anymore, but people who know what I do come to me, whether they're realtors or whether they know somebody that I've helped in the past 11 years. And so that's typically how I find my deals, is people find me. But I know that Deb Kennedy's way more up to date on the latest of all the marketing tips and techniques. So I'll let her maybe speak about that.
Great, thanks. Or is Deb frozen? She sits there so quietly, it's hard to tell.
Apparently that's one of the expressions of 2020. You're on mute.
Maybe Neil can take it away then.
When it comes to wholesaling, quite frankly, we have been more the assignee, as in the recipient of a wholesale deal, than we have in assigning deals out. So I can speak from that end more.
So I am thinking deals in all kinds of places. Oh, am I again?
I think Deb has a delay.
Yeah, I would say you have a delay, Deb. Okay, back to you, Neil.
Back to me?
Sure.
We have been fortunate enough to have been, we've really only started doing fix and flip side of real estate for true reno resale, list it right away, as opposed to reno, put it into our rent to own portfolio. We've been doing that obviously for a while, but the true reno and flip, half of our deals, quite frankly, have come from other people who had put it under contract and assigned them to us. In fact, we got them from members in the student success group. So there has been definitely a benefit to hanging out in that group. And so for us, it's about making sure that the people are aware, I guess, that we're looking for something like we are right now. And as projects come and go, then being on people's call list certainly helps. And I think there's going to be some discussion about how do you build those lists. I know that some of your students have done a really good job of starting to just make their way into that. I think Wayne will probably key into that, because I think he challenged a few people that way, and it was good to see some results being shown in the group, people taking the necessary steps. Nice segue, Rain.
There. Oh, very good. It's like you practiced that.
How are you doing over there, Deb? You got connection yet? Are you moving? Oh, she's frozen.
Deb,
you're frozen.
Frozen again.
Donna, I wanted to ask you. I mean, maybe do you want to start off with maybe what a definition of wholesaling is, or as Barry would put it, or as it would be found in the manual? What is the definition of wholesaling?
Well, the definition of wholesaling, short, is pretty much what Neil said, is we find a property, get it under contract, and sell our interest in that property, which is in the contract, the buyer's interest, to an end buyer, so that you're actually selling the contract rather than the property.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work?
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, good.
I was trying to write some notes before I got here. I'm like, well, how would I define wholesaling? Let's let Deb back in here.
There she is.
Oh, I think we can hear her.
Ta-da!
Yeah, there you are. Yay!
I'm very sorry. We're having huge Wi-Fi issues in our community.
Absolutely fine. So we
Am I
were
gone
going to. No, you're still there. Marketing. You are totally the gal to talk about marketing, I believe.
I don't know how much of this is going to get through, but I'll try. Yeah, so I'm marketing on Kijiji. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Google Words or Google Ads, whatever their current lingo is. And I do some direct mails as well, either in communities that I'm interested in or other areas. So yeah, and then I just make a deal with myself that I will pick up the phone and call anybody that connects with me. And sometimes it's a deal and sometimes it's really not.
We were so lucky to have you share your call log with us in our 6-week challenge. So we got to enjoy some of those stories that you did. So
yeah, you get some pretty bizarre ones for sure.
So do you have an example? What are like 3 keywords that you use in your ads that you're finding, or phrases?
3 key phrases. Sell my house fast. That one's always big. Sell my home today is another one that seems to be working right now. What's the one? For sale by owner is the other top one that seems to be working very well right now.
Great.
Nothing, no rocket science. It's the same ones people have been using for years. Yeah.
That's the thing. It is actually something that you can systemize and just keep working and tweaking as the cycles go along. Right.
For sure.
I think when it comes to MLS listings, you can certainly search by probate. So oftentimes when houses are in probate, you can make a good cash offer. We had one years ago where 4 daughters inherited their dad's house, and he'd been the only owner of that house since the time it was built. So he'd been in there 40 plus years. And they were kind of squabbling about the price. So we gave them a price, and it took them about 3 months to come back to us. So we gave them a new lower price. And I listed it with my realtor, and it sold day one. And all we did was spend $600 on cleaning. So oftentimes you can get a good deal on probates, but they have to be motivated. So
Right.
that was a private one that came to us. They sought us out. But that could be a keyword search that you may want to explore as well in your advertising.
Jared had a question here. I think I'm just gonna go with the questions as they come in today. Change up the format a little bit, if that's okay, Donna.
Sure.
Yeah. So Jared asked, as a buyer, Neil, do you prefer to be on a mass email list, or do you like being singled out by a wholesaler with specifically what you're looking for?
I guess, and quite frankly, if I'm looking at it from my perspective, I would rather be, first on the list for the stuff that I'm looking for. That said, if you happen to be in an email blast type list and someone said, hey, here's a property in, I don't know, Hidden Valley, and I never had thought about doing a renovation or a rent to own or whatever the exit is in that neighborhood, I can see advantages to both. So certainly, I think, Jared, as you're going, you'll find that as you get, probably one of the things you want to be as a buyer is I want the first call, is probably what it's about. So we don't want to be necessarily blasted at the same time to everyone, but you only get to be the first person on the call if you're taking those deals. Because there was one of the fellows here in town. He's a realtor, Donna, who was at the course, I think about 2 years ago, Drew. And I had spoken to Drew a little while ago, went and looked at a property a year and a half ago, phoned him up. Hey, we're looking for our next project. He goes, okay, you're active. I'll put you back on my list. I'm like,
Oop.
good to know, right? So you have to make sure that it's kind of, Jared, one other thing is, right, keeping your name top of mind. Deb has her website always going. We have our website always going, and I'm going to squirrel on the squirrel. Check your own website, folks. Ask me how I know. We just realized that our submit form was broken. It just was going nowhere and just said processing. So make it a regular part of your process to go and have a look at your own website, especially if you're not seeing any inquiries come in. Sometimes you go, well, there's just no inquiries, but sometimes it could be that you're having technical difficulties, and you could have this great website, and if nobody can get a hold of you off the website, you might as well not be spending the money on it, type of thing. So sorry on the squirrel. I don't know if that answered your question, or Gerald, Jared rather.
So Neil, as an active investor, do you know what you're looking for, or are you just like, hey guys, just find me a good deal, has good numbers?
Both is probably my quick answer to that, Wayne. Sorry. So when it comes to stuff that we're going to roll into our rent-to-own portfolio, that basically is Airdrie. We're not really interested in going outside of there for us personally. I know some folks who have rent-to-own websites, and they'll do the whole province, quite frankly. So again, it depends on how you choose to go to market. For us, rent-to-own and our We Buy Houses is very specific. It's Airdrie House Buyers is our website. So, but since we've ventured into the world of reno resale through Flip, we've realized that we have to look outside of this town, this city, because there just isn't that lift. Like if you're in, say, Acadia in Calgary, if you can buy a property in Acadia these days for $360 or so, you're going to spend 125-ish on reno, and 35 if you have hard money lending to carry it and be able to list that property in the upper fives. So there's still some spread, and we just don't see that here in Airdrie, because there's no advantage to being closer to downtown, because everything here is about 12 minutes from downtown max, type of thing.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it depends. Like, we'll look at anything, because I quite frankly don't know my Calgary neighborhoods. And so I'm learning as I go. So it's a case of trying to learn some of that. We would love to stay in the neighborhoods we know, because once you've seen some success, again, in Acadia, it's just that there's not always an opportunity to buy there, right? We hear about I read about investors who are buying properties in Edmonton to legally suite them and doing the same in Calgary, doing that kind of rental resale. And it appears that there's more of that inventory out there in those, in those two categories. We haven't ventured down that road yet.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that everyone's going towards the secondary suite additions?
I think there's, if you think about where a lot of folks are in the creative end of things, not everyone comes from that end of it, but a lot of us come from the buy and hold side first. And then as we start to realize that the cash flow out of that may not be enough to generate an income today that replaces a full-time job, but you're building a future, right? Your mortgage pay down is where all of the real rewards are, or the big chunk of the rewards are. The 3-course meal, I think we call that. So cash flow appreciation, but the big one is mortgage pay down, especially in a flattish market like we're in right now. So as people start to realize that and look for other opportunities, and you're hearing the success stories of people who are saying, well, I bought this illegally suited property and I don't know my Edmonton neighborhoods, you could name one probably, or in Calgary, there seems to be a number of neighborhoods that work here, that there's enough of those properties, that there's ample supply of them, where it's not just one renovator who's buying them all up. Like Acadia, I can mention Acadia because it's really hard to get the right price in Acadia right now. About a month ago, there was one listed there. It went on at $369. Went, that might be worth looking at. And 14 offers later, it sold at $410.
What?
In a day? Yeah, and there was no math in it. So that was either a rookie renovator or someone who can do it sweat equity, or putting their own cash in, not having to pay hard money, or someone who's going to live in it. It could be all of that. Someone who didn't do the proper math, or someone who's going to, live in the property and maybe not even fix it up as they go. It's not always a renovator buying the original houses, right? So all competition though.
Cool.
I think though, when it comes to wholesales, we're not just talking about ugly houses, although that is one strategy. And one other thing, when we talk about marketing, is we're solving people's pain point. And another kind of emerging pain point for people is hoarding. So if you offer to buy a hoarding house as is, they only take what they want and they leave the rest. That is solving a massive pain point out there. And we were able to do something just like that and help out a senior lady who had fallen and broken her hip. And so the hospital wouldn't let her go back home. And her daughters hadn't been in her house. She had not allowed them in for 10 years. And the amount of stuff, I mean, all the neighbors pitched in and they took 14 loads to the dump, and the house was still full when I saw it. So unfortunately, this senior lady had gambled. It used to be a free and clear house, and she gambled a debt up to $180,000. So that determined the purchase price of what they wanted. They just wanted enough to clear their mom's debt. And so we were able to just walk in and take over, and we did renovate the property. But just think about what problem you're solving for people. Another thing about wholesaling can be agreement for sale contracts. So here's another kind of pain point that we ran into, and this is a shout out to Nathan Kay, who's been working really hard at all of his marketing. And he found a deal in Sylvan Lake where the lady, would have had to put in some renovations, paint, and do some carpeting, replace her hot water tank if she wanted to list her property for sale. But then there's no guarantee that it would sell. Plus, she didn't have the money to put into to do it in the first place. So she found Nathan's website, and basically we offered her $2,000 above what she owed, which allowed her to move on, never have a showing, never clean, very dirty house. She didn't even vacuum before we came over, right? So that you can wholesale that agreement for sale contract because there's still value there. She just re-signed a 5-year mortgage for us at 2% interest rate. So it's actually going to cash flow as a single family house. So you just have to keep in mind what pain point are you solving for people? And it's not always money. Sometimes it's just the hassle.
Andrea, do you think that wholesaling only works with flip properties and agreement for sale properties, or can wholesaling work with like turnkey properties as well, properties that don't need to be renovated, or does it have to be something that's distressed?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be. I've actually wholesaled some agreement for sales that required no work. So it's possible to do it, and even at the higher price point. So in the past, I've nearly wholesaled a couple of properties that just simply are too high of a price point that I would keep them as a rental. So, you know, like $500,000 and above. And I simply found somebody who could not qualify for a mortgage and would live in the property themselves. And I just charged a fee to put the deal together. So, you know, it's a little more difficult, but you can find, you know, nice houses that you can wholesale and still make a profit.
Jump in on that one.
course.
Keyword that you said there, Andrea, that I wanted to talk about in this session was the word fee. Assignment fee, a wholesale fee. How does a wholesaler make money? I put a house under contract for 200 that I'm going to spend 20,000 on repairs, and it's worth 300 at the end of the day. So there's 80,000 potential lift. That if you sold that house for 205, 10, 15, there's still enough meat on the bone for the person who's taking it from you to make money on it. So a little hint for folks as you're moving forward, if you have talked to or seen the advertisements within the group from some of the established wholesalers in, I'll say in the Edmonton area, because two people come to mind. One is the Senyuks, the other is Wade Fenner. Go back, folks, if you're interested in that. Search them in the Barrie forums here, the group, and see if they actually say the word fee or assignment fee or markup or anything like that. The product is presented as, I'm back to my $200,000 house that needs 20 grand repairs. They say house under market value, $300,000 ARV. You can buy this place for $225 and spend 20,000 repairs. Period. Because what you make on a house has nothing to do with the value of it, if that makes sense. So if I got a really good deal because it was a friend of the family and they had, you know, I'd been the favorite not son, and they gave me that house for 150,000, should I pass it on for a $5,000 or $10,000 fee? No, right? And same thing, if you had to stretch to make the deal, but you still think there's some meat in the bone for the next person, Jared, this would be one for you, right? You want to get your feet wet, and you only made 2,500 or $5,000 on the property, but it helped you learn the process. It wasn't about the money. On our first flip house, we made $9,000, but we learned enough to go on to the second one. So sometimes it, again, not about money is also in the wholesaling end of it. So little tip, take the word includes the fee, or I'm only making, or I want to make. It's the price is, because the value of the property is what speaks for it, and the fee is I guess it's assumed is one way to put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be just passing on out of goodwill and making nothing too, but you don't have to. You can tell people that, or you don't have to tell that. But in the terms of marketing, people get stuck. Well, how come you're making 20 grand? That's not fair. Well, right? Do you like the price that you're paying for it? Is really what matters to a person buying the property from you, right?
Absolutely.
And frankly, I think I would take that person off my list if they can't see the value and they're focused. It doesn't fit for how we as a group approach these things with the win-win. We are leaving room for profit. It has nothing to do with what we're doing with it, what we're making. It's so.
I should add one more name to that, because Deb wholesaled a property in Beddington that we all missed because we were just too short, and it didn't say what the fee was in it, right? So just an observation that comes from that.
It's good to have you back, Deb.
For the next few minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
But I would add to that just like you negotiate with your motivated seller, you're probably going to be negotiating with your buyer as well. And you may end up with 2 or 3 buyers. So it might be an easy negotiation. You just never know.
Well, while we've got you, Deb, I would love to hear how you describe to your seller what you're planning to do, if you're planning to wholesale or assign your contract.
Very carefully. So I am totally blunt and honest with them, and I warn them ahead of time. I'm just going to say it like it is. So if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm not playing any games. And then I tell them I'm not a real estate agent. So I will help you with this transaction. We're going to put it in my name. We're going to sign the deal. I work with a variety of business partners, and just like Andrea has taught me, I basically say sometimes I take the deals myself, and sometimes one of my business partners may work with me or may decide to take the deal. The benefit to the seller, though, I'm always very clear, you don't pay me. My investor partners will be paying me. So there is no fee to you. You can meet the ultimate buyer before we sign any documents. We can't do anything without you signing the contract. So there's no sneaky business. There's nothing behind the scenes kind of thing. It's still your house, and you still have a lot of say in how this moves forward. So I try to make them, like, I'm kind of ad-libbing here, but I try to make them feel like they're still in control. They still have choices. It's all legitimate. We're going to do it all through lawyers. I just try to put their biggest fears aside by basically saying this is legit. Like, you've tried selling, most of the ones I talk to these days have already tried selling to average Joe home buyer, and it hasn't worked. So what if you try selling to an investor, one of my investor colleagues? Let's see if we can get you a solution that way.
Right.
And it works?
Usually, yeah. Not always. Some of them are like, I don't know. Or usually what happens is somebody else steps in. So I've had a mortgage broker kill a deal. I've had a lawyer kill a deal. I've had a long lost uncle kill a deal because it sounds fishy to them, because they weren't in the room with me when we negotiated something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Deb, do you want to tackle this question that I got up on the screen as well while I got you, since you didn't get as much time to talk?
I'm okay with that. So how do I get a wholesale deal under contract? I bring a contract every single time I go to a house. So I screen my deals, of course, on the phone first because it's COVID. But if I get as far as going to the house, I bring the contract with me and I let them know that I am ready to do business. I am always ready to do business. I have a pen, I have paper. Let's see if we can work this out. So they know. So I just lay it on the line. Are you interested in a deal? Do you want to call me back in a month? So I'm ready, and they know that I mean business. And some of them have had their house listed. So I just talked to one on day 473 of having her house listed. She's still not ready to do a deal. But anyways, I was there with contract, and nobody else had ever brought a contract even to the house to a meeting with her. So we'll see if she calls me back. I don't know. But showing, like, proving basically that you're ready to do business, you're ready to put it under contract, makes a big difference, is what I'm finding.
Did you hand her the pen and get her to sign on the line that is dotted, or did you just leave her the offer? What's your normal practice for something like that?
It's different with every deal. I'm sorry to be evasive with the answer there, but it depends a little bit. So if I've had some time, I might. So one deal I signed in September, I literally brought the comparables with me and showed her the comparables. And I said, this is the price that I'm prepared to pay based on these comparables. And I literally said, do you want some time to think about it? Do you want to just go ahead and sign it now and be done with it? And then I explain that we're still going to do some diligence. We're still going to do that inspection. We're still going to check this or that or whatever my conditions are. But I'm willing to sign that deal that day.
And you're not too concerned about them having second thoughts or like kind of making them make an impulsive decision? Or are you just
Again,
gauging the room?
yeah, I am totally gauging the room. So one person, she said, I just want to talk to my sisters about it. So I took a deep breath and went, oh, you never know if the sisters are going to talk her out of it.
Yeah.
But I said yes, because for an agreement for sale, which that deal was, I need to work with her over an extended period of time.
Right.
So if her support system is constantly telling her this is a bad idea, then that's going to be an unpleasant experience for me. So if she needs 72 hours to check with her network, then I'm good with that.
We have another question here that
Wayne,
says,
sorry, Wayne, there was more to that question. There was, what wording do you use in your contract?
right.
Let's not miss that part. We're
For sure.
all about the logistics. That's great for that.
Wording in the contract, like the assignment contract?
In the offer.
So just, I don't know if I'm supposed to answer this, but just in the terms, buyer reserves the right to unilaterally amend the buyer's name. And so I say it's a term. So this one isn't going to disappear. It's not like a condition. I won't release it. It's always there in the contract. And it means that you and I have talked about the fact that I work with business partners, and this contract might end up in one of my business contacts' names.
Awesome.
We just wrote a contract, an offer, not a contract, unfortunately, on a townhouse here in Calgary, and we had that clause in there. Seller accepts that buyer may unilaterally amend this contract to reflect an investor or joint venture as the ultimate purchaser of the property. And when the offer came back to us, that clause had been struck out. And so we looked at it, and like Deb said, well, that's kind of really important to us to have that in there because we want to keep our options open. So it got fed back from us to our realtor, to their realtor, to the seller, in a nice way of saying, if in this case it was a straight deal, straight cash deal, not agreement for sale, that says if you're selling the house and a lawyer is sending your lawyer a bag of money, does it matter to you whose name goes on title as long as you get the agreed to price? And again, that's fairly bluntly worded because it was from me to my realtor. So I let them figure out the nice way to do it. But we've all said it. We're sitting, I've actually said it that way, but kind of passed it off as a joke, right? Does it really matter to you where the money comes from at the end of the day? Remember, the goal here, what you're trying to accomplish is a sale on your property. And if you're out and done, again, on a cash sale, a lawyer, my lawyer, or someone else's lawyer is going to transfer your lawyer. It's still going to get done that way. Is going to transfer the funds over. So that clause that Deb mentioned is a must-have. If you're going to sign the contract, you need to be able to have that. I will add one other thing in there too that you may, again, if you're like, what if I have to close on this contract? If it's such a good deal, then again, a $300,000 house you can buy for $200,000. You may not ever put this clause in there, but if you're going, well, is this house in Outer Rubber Boot, Saskatchewan, way north of Prince Albert going to sell ultimately? You can always put in a subject to clause, and I would always tell a seller that we were doing that. That says, the conditions in a deal, I don't have a finance condition, folks, right? It's not subject to me getting approved by the bank. I may put in a property inspection condition. A lot of times we don't because we'll have gone and looked at it. But again, you may want to get a property inspected, so you may have that subject to. But the one that is the quote unquote get out of jail free card, if you're like, uh-oh, what if I have to close on this $300,000 house at 240 and I don't know if I can get the funds. I don't know if what I'm going to do with it. Subject to buyer's lawyers, subject to buyer's lawyers review, and help me out, Andrea, I'm losing it here. Buyer's lawyers review and acceptance or agreement, right? And approval. Approval is the word I was looking for of this contract. it's really it's the ultimate deal breaker, because if I don't want the deal, I don't think my lawyer is going to approve it. And that is what allows you, so for whoever asked the question, to say, hey, it's my first wholesale deal and I'm a little nervous about, what if I have to close? Well, again, as part of your contingencies, you're going to be lining up some hard money lending in the background, or joint venture and or finance, right? So that if you had to close on it, might not be a bad deal anyways, but if you wanted to make the quick cash in the wholesale, away you go.
And why is it that you don't put any financing conditions or any inspection conditions?
The cleaner that the deal is out of the chute, the more that a seller has the assurance that it's done, you can move on with your life. Remember that a lot of times a seller is looking for a solution that they haven't been able to find conventionally, right? It hasn't worked on MLS, DEB's 472-day listing. You can have a seller that doesn't trust MLS or realtors, and therefore they don't even want to go down that road. But the fewer, it's like if you look today at most foreclosure listings, unless it's a really, really slow market, if you're looking at a foreclosure listing, it has to be a clean offer, right? Can't have any subject to finance, can't have any subject to inspection. I'll go the other way. If you're in the hot market that is, I think, still going on in Ottawa right now, you can't write subject to finance, you can't write subject to inspection there. So if there are people interested in a property, the same property is probably getting a half a dozen inspections done on it, all paid for by individual buyers before they go submit their condition-free offer.
Mm-hmm.
So clean offers get noticed is the easiest way to put it.
One other thing I would mention too, I use slightly different wording in my terms section. So it just sounds a little more gentle. And what I write down is buyer may change the name on the contract to business partner's name. So it just sounds a little softer of an approach, and I've never had anyone cross it out. So that's
brilliant.
Just another approach to accomplish the same thing.
Is the focus there, Andrea, on the word change instead of amend, or more than that, you're not having the word unilaterally in there?
No unilateral.
It's a big word.
Yeah. I put buyer may change, not this is my right.
Right. And Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, all purchase contracts are assignable in Alberta, correct?
In Alberta are assignable, yeah.
So we have the right, but like Andrea said, you don't really want to start shaking your fist saying this is my right, because you want to maintain that relationship with the seller.
Absolutely. The relationship with the seller, I'd like to just spend a minute on that. Actually, great timing for that, Wayne, is how important that is within assignments and wholesaling and options, is to maintain that relationship, because ultimately they're the ones that are closing. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, since we got you, and I know that you have great relationships with realtors, someone asked, how do you find a realtor who is wholesale focused?
That's a good question. I think that not every realtor understands investing and understands a good deal. So just like everyone thinks that if it's a foreclosure, it must be a good deal. And so they all bid on it and they end up paying retail or more. So I think really what's important is to have a realtor that's a go-getter and somebody that understands value. And I had seen somebody else's comment in there too. And it's the same for investors. Like Neil does Airdrie. He knows Airdrie inside and out. He doesn't know Calgary inside and out, but he knows Airdrie and he knows a good deal when he sees it. And the same is for me in Red Deer. So I would encourage you to work with a realtor who knows what's going on. And typically those are people who are active in the marketplace. They may not have their name on every piece of marketing, bus bench or whatever out there, but somebody who's a mover and a shaker and doing deals. If you're working with a realtor who's never done a deal before or doesn't have any history of working in your city or your community, it's really hard for them to understand what a good deal is, because when you see a good deal, you need to be able to make an offer within hours sometimes of when it's listed. So I think those are all really important things. And my realtor, he used to call me if he saw a good deal, and he said, just came out on the market. I've already sent it to your email. And that's what you need, is you need somebody who knows what they're doing and is motivated.
And then you talked about hoarding earlier, and Cheryl had she'd seemed a little shocked. She said, really, hoarding is that big of a market. Do you guys want to talk about maybe, or do you want to touch on it, Andrea, about like hoarding and cleanups? Are there lots of deals like that where you just go in and it's just a mess and it just needs to be cleaned up?
It seemed that way. My last fix and flip was a hoarding.
Really?
Well, when you think about it, Wayne, what hoarder, first of all, wants to let people in their house? Most of them are very private people, and it's mental illness, right? So oftentimes it's not the person that's been living there that's entertaining your offer. It's a family member that's trying to resolve the situation, whether this person is now, receiving care or passed on. And you think about the amount of work that it would be, it's overwhelming. Whereas somebody like you or me, I don't have time to sift through all this stuff to see what value there is. It's just going to the dump, and I'm just going to hire somebody to, in a big bin out front and just fill it, just go time, right? So I think it's a bigger problem than what we know or we think about. So it's definitely a pain point for people. You can understand the emotional attachment people have, not only to that being their mom or their dad's house or their family home, but then having to wade through all of this stuff. Yeah.
To extend on that, how do you know if a house is full of garbage on the inside, or if there's holes in the drywall on the inside? From the street, from the sidewalk, are there any signals, any cues, any red flags that you can see that potentially, because I've walked into some houses and I'm like, I did not expect that from what I saw from the street. Do you guys have any things that you look for that kind of give you indicators of that?
Oftentimes they can have a lot of junk outside, but like you mentioned, Wayne, sometimes they don't, because they're hiding what's happening on the inside of the house, right? So even though the outside might look, really nice, but it's a mixed bag in my experience. But let's hear from other people too.
Do you guys have any?
I'll say this. I think hoarding, the term, can have some relativity to it. That we inherited a tenant 14 years ago who literally was those shows that you see on reality TV where if the living room was this square, where's the camera, right? You had to walk down an aisle with stuff piled about 4 feet high, and it was an aisleway that was maybe 1.5 feet wide, and the whole room was filled with stuff. We've also taken on houses where it was just 30 and 40 years of accumulation that was neatly piled here and there and stored and boxed. Boxes may or may not have started to move into living room again. It's all relative. The other thing I wanted to say though, Andrea, is you may want to check in your market. I know that here in Airdrie, we just stumbled upon someone said, "Hey, wait, why are you sending all that stuff to the dump?" In that there are actually companies who will come in and either make you a bid for everything in there, and so they're doing your cleanup and maybe paying you some pocket cash for that, or they'll agree to take the stuff of value and consign it. So we, the last house that we bought, it wasn't a hoarder house for sure, but there were a lot of possessions that were left behind that had some value. There was a complete audiovisual system. There was 100 DVDs. The DVDs, you try and go on Garage Sale, everyone's got DVDs listed for sale. They went to the consignment store, gone. they were gone like that, and they auto deposited some money into our account, and we didn't even have to try and sort it and sell it and stuff like that, other than to pull the Star Wars TVs out for me, but that's a whole other story. So it's possible you can turn, I think about some of the stuff that has gone to the dump, and quite frankly, again, in some of our first houses, there was a ton of usable clothing, quite frankly, that should have gone back into the system and didn't. But you learn as you go, and sometimes you feel badly because, man, you're like, this is someone's life. Like, we looked at what looked like armed forces mementos and stuff like that, but the family had been through and they had taken what they wanted, and what do you do, right? It was unfortunate. So, but yeah, you may want to see if you can turn that from an expense into even just something revenue neutral for you.
So Neil, really quickly there, what would you Google find that kind of business would come in?
Estate sale, consignment sale. Those would be the two things. Secondhand store. Those things. In our particular case, if anyone, I have a feeling that these folks, quite frankly, would run into Calgary for the right stash, so to speak. I don't know if they go to Red Deer or not, Andrea. Linda has their information, so if anyone is interested, you can send me a message and I can share that group. But that, we didn't go looking for them. It was just, again, that word of mouth going, wait, no, we're not taking that to the dump, right? And in the past, we would have.
So I wrote a ton of questions down today thinking that I'd just be prepared, but this has actually been a really great discussion. I'm looking over at the questions over on the side here, and we got a ton, and we got about 11 minutes left. So if you guys want, I'm just going to start ripping through questions. Throw your hand up if you guys got the answer. Does that work for you, Donna?
Let her rip.
All right. Jared, again, asks, as a wholesaler, what is an ideal process when getting a motivated seller on the phone? And what are good criteria to know if the house is a good one to actually go and to look at it? Additionally, when you decide to go look at the house, what are you looking for specifically?
I love that he didn't say, quick question this time. Sorry, Jared.
Who wants to tackle it?
Okay, Andrea is voluntold for the first part of this.
Sure.
Ideal process.
So ideally, you want people to call you through your marketing. That shows a level of motivation. And so some of the key questions I want to know is, how much do they think it's worth? How much are they willing to sell it for? How soon do they need out? And is that the best they can do when they name a price? And how did they come to that price? I want to know all those things, because when they say to me, well, that's the amount that's on my property tax bill, I know that that probably isn't accurate at all. So, you know, it just leads to motivation and to the concept of if they know what the actual value is and how motivated they are.
I'll tag to that real quickly. That says, right, the questions, the ones that you want to ask verbatim, not make your own, but word for word say, if you don't mind me asking, why are you selling? And sometimes they'll bloop and just spill everything to you. Sometimes people say, well, we're downsizing. But a lot of times people will tell you what their motivation is right out of the chute. And everything that Andrea said, plus I want to know, what does the house need for repairs? Because then I can get a sense of it.
The other part of this question, how do you know when to leave your desk, when to leave your chair, when to go down to the house? Is there keywords that you're looking for?
You mean to go write an offer, get to the
Well,
house?
you're on the phone with them, you're getting all the information and such. How do you know whether this is something you should go down? Because you don't go see every house, right?
I think part of that is becoming an expert in your area so that you know what a good deal is. That's really key, because if somebody's telling me about a house in Red Deer and they're giving me a number that's like 75,000 or 100,000 less than what I know that house. So let's say a single family house that would sell for 300, they're asking 200 for it. Then I know that I better get my ass out of the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's why it's really important to know the values in the area that you're investing in. because that's what's going to get your butt up out of the chair and go.
Kevin Cooper asked if I was to put in an offer for buying a property to wholesale, what are some pitfalls? What happens if I tie it up and don't find a buyer? Can you explain the process, please? Neil, you touched on it a little bit earlier, didn't you?
Yeah. The pitfalls are obviously if you take on a property, put it under contract, agree to buy it, and can't assign that contract or wholesale it out before you have to close. So do you have a contingency plan? The pitfall would be that now if you haven't put in an escape clause, so to speak, that allows you to get out of the deal, you're obligated to close or lose your deposit and even possibly get sued for a breach of contract. So if you're going to tie it up, make sure that you have an understanding of this thing is going to go, or that you have the ability, again, through your own set of finances, through finding a joint venture or hard money lender, to close on yourself.
We're not big fans of tying up properties just on spec.
Right.
These sellers, we're working on their pain points. We're trying to solve the problem for them. Tying it up and then disappointing them is definitely not doing that. So please make sure you've done your education and your research and you've got some contingency in place. Just start writing offers and hurting sellers. Your reputation will follow you as well if you do that kind of thing.
Be a good person. Adrian asked, what is that condition that you would typically put on there? You mentioned it earlier.
That's subject to lawyer's approval.
Buyer's lawyer's approval, review and approval. Buyer's lawyer's approval. Yeah.
I had a question here. Sorry, I lost it. Someone asked, is it advisable to have a mentor rather than make a mistake and learn approach in wholesaling? Do any of you guys advise on finding a mentor to teach you? Or do you think it's best to go out there and just give it a shot?
Yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about this.
It's an underhand. It's an easy one.
I think that it's important to get educated, and you either pay to learn or you learn by paying. So if you want somebody to hold your hand, I don't know how quick you're going to be to pick up a wholesale deal. I think you're better to get it under contract with conditions and then figure it out. If you need, a senior person's point of view on it.
Now we do have a home study kit, barrymaguire.ca, for the education part. The great thing, once you have that, or a student, you get into the Barry Maguire's Student Success Group, which is the higher level of mentoring and support by the focus team and other investors, students. So there's that too. But yeah, definitely get some education. Please don't go out there. Again, the sellers are depending on you, and it just isn't fair. It's just not right.
To tie it up for 2 weeks when they're already in a horrible situation anyways. You promised them you were going to solve that problem for them fast, and then you go and tie it up for an additional 2 weeks, and they got to go put it back on the market. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going through questions. A lot of them we asked already. Scotty asks, Deb, is wholesaling your main strategy?
No, I use multiple strategies. So I can finance with a company like Calvert. I think Donna's featured them before. I will look for joint venture partners for properties, and I will also wholesale. So I do all of the above. And just to kind of touch on the, tying up properties, a lot of us are big fans of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And one of his things is to go into a negotiation as prepared as you possibly can be. So if you have the time before you go into that negotiation, do you already have the comparables? If you don't have tons of experience in that area, can a realtor pull the comps for you so that you have an idea of where the value is at? Can you pull title? Can you do a little background on the seller or the community? So the more prepared you are when you go in, the better you will be at negotiating a good offer, in my opinion.
Scotty had another question. He asked, how are we able to assign a deal without a signee knowing what we are making? I know the answer, but does anyone else want to touch on this?
Neil?
Neil?
Simultaneous close, otherwise known as skip transfer. I think simultaneous close is probably the answer that comes to my mind. So a simultaneous close is you have the property under contract from the seller, and then you create a whole, I don't know where my camera is today, and then you create a separate contract from you as the wholesaler to the ultimate buyer. And you hand it to your lawyer, and they do their magic in between. Donna, care to comment?
Make sure you have an experienced lawyer on this.
If you think about home builders on a brand new house, the lot rarely, I won't say never, but the lot rarely goes, in the case of big developers, into the home builder's name. It goes from the developer straight through to the end user, and they accomplish it because you're buying the house from the builder, but the lot passes through in a similar manner through an experienced lawyer.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Brian Banks, is there any due diligence to be done on an end buyer, the person that you were assigning it to, before you assign the contract? Well, I think that it's you want to be sure that they are actually going to close, right? You want to make sure they're a serious investor. You don't have to verify that they have the funds, but it's not a horrible idea. If you're going to sign something to them and then they don't close, doesn't look very good for you if your name is on it, your reputation. Your name isn't on it, but you were the one that promised the seller this is going to be taken care of, and then the person didn't complete it. So, I mean, I would make sure of that. If you're doing an agreement for sale, I have a personal experience. If you're signing an agreement for sale contract, absolutely, because you're not assigning a purchase contract and the person's closing on it with financing. What you're doing is you're assigning an agreement for sale, essentially, and this investor is going to have a relationship with the seller for a period of time, and you want to make sure that they're going to be as honorable as you are.
The first renovation deal that we bought that was assigned to us, what happened was the buyer who assigned it to us actually had assigned that contract out to someone else and said, "You're sure you can close on this?" And they went, "Absolutely, we can." And they phoned her back a week later and said, "We can't close on this deal." And for exactly what you were talking about, Wayne, she jumped back in only because her name was attached to the initial deal. They had waived conditions. They had paid her, in her case, it was done with a disclosed assignment fee. They had paid her the fee, and the assignment paperwork was all done. So she was clear and clean on the deal, but in the moral, ethical side of it, to keep moving forward, she took that deal and shopped it around again. And we said, yes, we are willing to look at it now. And it worked out.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have a question. I do want to get to this before I lose my train of thought on this. How do you build your buyers list? I think that we have a lot of people that are excited about doing wholesaling, but they're in all the same groups as all the other investors and all the other wholesalers. And how do they stand out? What would you suggest?
I actually had a conversation about this recently with a few new wholesalers, and what I advise them is that don't just go saying, "Hey, who wants to be on my list?" To all the real estate investing groups in the area, because you're going to get no shortage of people saying, oh yeah, sign me up, email me your deals. 95% of them do not have the means or the experience or the knowledge, expertise to close on them. So what happens is you go out and you find them a deal, you bring it to them, and they won't close on it. They don't have the financing set up to be done in 2 weeks, right? Because when you got a deal, you want someone to take it, say yes, like that. You want someone who's a trigger puller. So, what I mentioned to them was that, you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You should be making sure that they're serious, and that if you're going to go out and find a deal for them, you want to know that they're actually going to buy it. Otherwise, you just wasted all your time. So I'd focus more of my energy on the serious investors rather than just getting people's names and having a big email list. That's my thoughts.
I'll address that also from the other end of the phone, so to speak. I would always have an inkling that there had been a seminar in town over a weekend, and Donna's laughing, because invariably our phone would ring in the next week or two, and someone would say, "Hey, I'm a wholesaler. Cool, nice to meet you. What are you interested? Airdrie? Do you have anything in Airdrie? No, not right now, but I'll call you as soon as I do." And literally, I never heard back from any of them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Build your list, have something to sell, right? If you think about it, again, I have a background in the car business. A lot of people know that. If I don't have a car to buy from Andrea to take over to Wayne to wholesale it from one dealership to the other, I can go to Andrea or go to Wayne and go, "Hey, Wayne, I got something to sell you." And you're going to go, "What do you got?" Right now it's an empty parking spot. You want to buy it? No. So having that first lead in your hand is certainly going to help you in building your buyers list, especially if it's a good juicy one.
So that brings me to my next question, which is, how do you present a potential deal to that buyer's list? Deb froze. So there she is. Andrea. So if you're wholesaling, and especially in these COVID times, you're not going to be just organizing showings for the seller's house. So how do you do that? What's that logistic?
I would do a walkthrough video so that you can get a good idea. And of course, you want to focus on things that you see that will need to be fixed, right? Because we want to be as transparent as we can. So, and potentially you'd even offer to do a home inspection and make that available to anyone who was interested in purchasing the deal from you. So I would make it as painless as you can for people to be able to say yes or no.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like Andreas, as painless as you can. I mean, reduce the friction as much as possible. Put it all out, everything that they need. So it's just a matter of them just verifying your numbers, your pictures, your videos and stuff like that, rather than sending them a bunch of text and they have to go run comparables and everything else. If you have everything right there, you tell them, this is how much you're going to make. This is how much it's going to cost for renovations. This is the after repaired value. Here's the pictures. Here's the comps, everything. And here's the exit strategy. And if you do a BRRRR, you're going to have this much money pulled out. You're going to have this much money going in. The easier you make it, someone will be able to quickly give you a quick answer rather than them having to spend a couple of days and do their own research, right?
Okay, thank you.
Deb?
Hey, so what are we in the middle of?
What was your question, Don? I completely lost my train of thought. I'm just reading.
That's okay. Well, let's move on to that other question, that quick question, Jared, for Deb, which was, when do you start the negotiation?
Whereabouts is this? Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I want to hear and learn as much as I can from the seller before I start opening my silly little yap. Like I'm purposely being a little bit cheeky here because as soon as I open my mouth, I can't take it back. So I would like to have as much information as I can
Okay.
I'm just
before I
scrolling.
start negotiating.
Deb,
And maybe they already have a drop dead number. So the property that I can see you. Can you see me?
You are cutting out quite a bit, Deb, sadly.
maybe Deb can respond in the chat there to Jared's question, so you can hear it fully and everyone else can see it. I'm just scrolling through the last of the questions. It's probably about 4 or 5 left. Do you want me to go through all of them, or you want me to just choose the best and then we'll answer the rest later?
Team, how are you doing?
I'm good.
We're all good.
Andrea earlier mentioned probate. How do you find properties on probate foreclosure to be secured for wholesaling purposes?
Well, two main ways. Either they find you through your marketing or the MLS, multiple listing service. Those are the two main ways.
Is there any way to find foreclosures online in Alberta?
You can go down to the courthouse and you can sit in on the foreclosure hearings. And then you would have to, manually write down the number of what the case file is and then pay $10 to pull the file. Now, during COVID, I don't think that's going to happen. They only allow the people into the courtroom who are supposed to be there. But I have in the past been in the Red Deer courthouse, and just out of curiosity, because Tuesdays used to be foreclosure day in Red Deer, and they probably don't do it in person right now because you don't really need to be in person to have a 5-minute foreclosure hearing, and literally most of them are 5 or 10 minutes. But essentially what happens is if the person's there, they may or may not have a lawyer, and the house may or may not be listed yet. And sometimes, the lawyers are just asking permission to lower the price. So it's interesting. Initially, an appraisal is done, and that's what determines the original list price. And then going from there, if there's no offers, then they have to go back to court and ask the judge to lower the price, to agree to lower the price. And so a suggestion is made by the listing realtor as to what that new price should be. So, sometimes the clients are in there and sometimes they're not. I don't know that I would approach a client at court. Maybe a bit of an ambulance chasing episode, but it's just a lot of extra work. And like I say, they may or may not already be listed. So you'd have to kind of see if it was worth your time.
Interesting. But it is a possibility, though. I mean, at the very least, there is a way to systematize it. And maybe if it is Tuesdays, you spend your Tuesdays going down there. And I mean, you might be able to help someone out. You're right. It does smell a little bit like, or seem a little bit like ambulance chasing. But it's all about your intent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, you can find the properties at the other end of the scale when they are now through the foreclosure process, and they're owned by either the bank, or if it's an insured mortgage, like a Genworth or a CMHC, and those do get listed. And if you ask your realtor, they can key in on the seller. I can't remember, there's a field anyways that will say bank owned or court appointed sale. There's some key words that any realtor worth their salt can set you up a search. And some foreclosure properties, through foreclosure properties that is, get listed and sold right away. Typically, there may be a deal in that. But again, like Andrea's talking about, the ones to watch once you have your search rolling is as a property gets to certain period depending on the bank, but typically it's 30-day increments. At 30 days, you may see that price drop. At 60 days, you may see a price drop. It's a fairly regular, it might be 75 days. A year ago, we put an offer in on December 23rd it was Genworth, and they had turned down a higher offer about 2 or 3 weeks prior to that. But we came in and said, we will have this off the books for year end for you. And we were closing on December 29th, and they accepted the deal. But we were fortunate again that we had the hard money lending in behind it to be able to close on that property. And it's today I had an appraisal done on it in August at 360, adding a garage to an existing concrete poured pad, and we bought the property at 292 or something like that. And it needed very little work inside, just a little bit of paint and flooring upgrades. So again, sometimes the motivation of the institutions, the property is no longer in foreclosure, it's through the foreclosure process. Banks don't want to own properties.
Spring asks, as a wholesale buyer, do you have the right to do a home inspection? And how do you ensure that the house is solid? I mean, I could touch on that. Absolutely. I mean, whoever is assigning the deal or wholesaling the deal, they more likely than not have it under conditions, some form of condition, like Neil mentioned earlier, Andrea mentioned, or whatever. So, I mean, they're offering you the contract while it's under conditions, and then you ultimately are the one that removes conditions. So if you want it, then say I'm going to go and do a home inspection. If that's the case, I'll buy this off you and I'll remove the conditions. Absolutely, you have the right to do a home inspection. If someone else comes along, Neil comes along and says, hey, it's mine, and I'm not doing a home inspection, then he's probably going to get it. It's just easier, right? The path of least resistance.
I think it's important to note that a wholesale buyer is simply a buyer until they wholesale it. You have all the rights and obligations of a buyer. So being a wholesaler doesn't change any of that until you actually write an assignment contract. Be careful about that.
Maybe I'll just the wholesale buyer, is that the middle person or is that the end buyer? I think that they're considering that the end buyer, right? The person who is going to be closing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So absolutely.
As long as it's still under conditions, you can do whatever you want to be satisfied, right? Yeah.
Unless you're an experienced renovator and you can go in that property and look for yourself real quickly, and you can see that it's something you're comfortable with doing without, a home inspection condition. That's a very powerful word right there. Network. When you're building, I think that was referring to the buyers list. We're getting down to the bottom. Take measurements. When you're advertising your deal, take measurements to have a good understanding of actual square footage. Yeah, don't go by what the seller says. I think it's 900 square feet. No, you don't want to know the actual square footage. Julia asks, can any of you speak to other provinces' wholesaling differences as compared to Alberta?
Well, BC, I think, would have the biggest differences because of the issues that they were having there with such a hot market. I believe that it has come out to where realtors can't assign, but I believe other investors can. I'm not.
So part of it depends on what you are wholesaling. So if you're wholesaling or trying to wholesale in a development that has a disclosure that specifically says you cannot, then you can't. So for example, if somebody's doing a pre-built condo building, it'd be quite common in BC in that condo building, while it's still in the construction stage, that you cannot resell your unit to somebody else. So that's quite common. That's part of the disclosure that you sign when you're purchasing. But you can also find that in other developments as well. So I think, if you're just wholesaling from Bob and Jean Brown of 123 Main Street, you're okay. But when it comes to things like pre-sale condos or developments, you're probably not going to be able to wholesale.
Well, I think that's the last of the questions. Deb, do you have any final thoughts? That's all.
So that was deep. Thanks, Deb. Yeah.
This is awesome, and I didn't even touch half my questions. So as usual, we have great potential for another Facebook Live on wholesaling in the future.
Ask your top question, Wayne.
What's that?
What's your top question?
What's my top question? I don't know. Well, a lot of them are going to open up a can of worms. Hey, Donna. What is the most common question that you get from new investors reaching out to you and Barry? Because I'm certain you guys get that a lot, right? Interested in your wholesaling course. What are the biggest questions or the most common questions you get from new investors who want to get into wholesaling?
I think the biggest one I get, or the one that seems to stick the most, is the disconnect between the helping the seller and explaining. So they go, well, what if the seller finds out I'm making some money? And it's the forgetting the importance of the help. You're solving a problem, and it's okay if you're making some money because they're getting what they need or want out of it. And like Neil was saying, it doesn't really matter where the money's coming from if you're getting your money, type of thing. So I think it's the disconnect between just being open and saying, this is what I do for a business, as a business, that I may make some money at this, but we'll make sure that you get what you need out of this, so that there doesn't have to be simultaneous close or backdoor deals or any of that, and just the openness of we're solution providers and we make money doing it.
That was one of the other things that I kind of had circled here, was that Neil had touched on the end buyer, the wholesale buyer is sometimes criticizing you for how much money you're assigning it for, but at the same time, on the other end, if you say you're going to be assigning it to a seller's like, oh, so you're just going to go and grind me down on the price and then go sell it for more. So you're kind of getting criticized on both ends, and I think you nailed it on the head. It's being confident and explaining that you're solving the problem, being a solution provider, and as long as they're getting the solution, does it really matter?
And I would say that if you're the person in the middle who is buying and then wholesaling a deal, the concept that says that you're going to potentially move this on comes up later in the process, perhaps, than very early on. I'm here just to buy your house so that I can make money on it. Selling to someone else is definitely not an approach. I don't think that would open a lot of doors for you. So if the seller is happy with the solution that you've provided for them, it becomes part of the natural flow that says, like in Andrea's case, I may change the name. You gotta remember this. Buyer may change the name to a partner. Was that your business partner?
Business partner's name, yeah.
They change buyer's name to business partner's name.
Okay, two very quick final questions. What do you expect in 2021?
Guess it depends how COVID goes. But, I think as long as people are able to make their mortgage payments, in general, people will be fine. Interest rates are staying low, so that's all good. But people always have to move for one reason or another. People are always getting divorced. People die. People get behind on bills. So there's always still an opportunity to make money.
I'll echo that. I think if there's going to be any change heading into 2021, 2020, quite frankly, from a creative buying standpoint, there was a fairly good period of pause in that CERB came out. And so people who may have had a problem with revenue to make their payments, or income, quite frankly, all of a sudden had the ability to make their payments, or they were able to get a deferral from their bank and defer payments. So the one that we picked up in late October, they had gone on deferral right in April when it was allowed, and they saw that their deferral period was ending. And he dragged his feet right to the very, very end. And finally, I think it was like literally 3 days before his next payment was due, he signed the contract with us, and we made the October 29th payment for him. So opportunity is probably my answer, possibly coming out of this.
I had a thought, and it was that I was more interested in like 2023, 2024, when interest rates start stabilizing. I'm going to use the word stabilizing, but I mean, in my opinion, interest rates may go up to 4 or 5%, back to where it should be normal. And will a lot of people be able to, once they get those renewals, will they be able to afford the payments anymore? But then as I was thinking, I thought about it, well, I guess that's why they did the stress test, right? So I'm kind of glad that the government introduced that stress test, because, for a second there, I thought, once people's mortgage payments go up a couple $100, in 3, 4, 5 years when they come up for renewals, it'll be interesting to see. I think that 2021 is going to be relatively the same as what we expected for 2020. It just hasn't quite popped yet. But lastly, someone asked, could we please have a session on other people's money and creative financing next time? What do you think, Donna?
Sure, maybe not next time, but it'll go on. I'll write it down right now. Got it.
And another
Send
request.
your ideas anytime, you guys.
Yeah.
Send me your ideas all the time. We want to get more people than Barry does. So.
Another request, maybe do a watch me fill out the forms live.
Oh, yeah? Oh, sorry.
And that's all.
We'll figure something out there. Okay. So we started out with marketing. We've talked education. We've talked about how to negotiate with the seller, with the end buyer. We've covered a lot here, you guys. So thanks so much, Focus Team. As always, you guys are my stars. Thank you.
No
Thanks
problem.
for having us.
Okay.
Thank you. All the best, everyone. Happy New Year and to 2021.
See you guys.
Thank you. Take care.